So Under Egg Priority episode 11 definitely changes the game and changes everything that we know about this show. And with seemingly one episode left to go, there is the obviously assumption that there's going to be one extra episode that will probably come when the Blu-rays are released, because originally this was supposed to be 12 episodes, no recap, then a recap got introduced, and it seemingly is going to end with next week's episode, but the general assumption is that either at a later date on the television station or bundled with the official Blu-rays, the official episode 12, which will be titled episode 13, will arrive, because I really just don't see them just ending it next week, but at the same time, with the information we just got, it wouldn't be impossible, so I guess time will tell. Do apologize if I seem a little tired or not as enthusiastic. Nothing about the episode. In fact, I would argue this was my personal favorite episode. Just mad tired. Your boy's been busy setting up new bed, doing that shit alone because your partner's at work. That shit drains you, I gotta admit. And because the episode came out a lot later yesterday because of a delay of materials, didn't have the energy then either. But episode 11, Frill, the idea of Akka and Uraka, just the idea of what the actual egg worlds and everything represent. I'm sure some people may not like the fact that the girl's suicide and depression have actually been linked up to this AI Frill. But I mean, this is anime, and I think it doesn't take away from the fact. I mean, to have some sort of magical entity or something supernatural controlling it and just letting you embrace those horrible things in life that can drag you down, even though you're supposed to push back and run away against them. To me, I think it works, especially considering everything we've seen in the Egg Worlds and Wonder Egg Priority in general. I mean, you kick this episode off, if it wasn't bad enough, Momo had to deal with it. Rika, same thing, except she was happy. Same thing with Momo. The person's moving on, you'll see them again someday, kind of implying that afterlife sort of situation, you've conquered your fear, and we have to introduce another one of these bastards who comes in, kills the pet, and most likely is going to do the same thing as last week. I like the idea that you are introducing these things that you're saying, wait, is this the people that they saved turned into a demonic form? And then you introduce the whole Frill dynamic, and Frill seemingly is using dot and hyphen to invade these characters' dreams, most likely as a way to make them just embrace their darkest and horrible fears because of jealousy, seemingly. The whole idea that these two, before they became what they are currently, the fact that they made essentially a daughter together, it was an AI and it was going to prove to be very interesting. And to see how lifelike she was and how normal she was, even though she had these really great traits that only 1 in a million would ever have, it still felt like a person despite being an AI. Introduce a love interest to the equation. The whole idea of jealousy and the fact that it started this cycle of like she didn't want to have a sister who would be prettier than her, and she saw realistically she would be because, well, look at the father, look at the mother, there's no way biologically it would come out gross, right? I mean, the girl would just end up being beautiful. And the fact that she went so psycho, so horrifying, that no one saw it coming because they didn't pay attention to the signs of the jealousy and the horrors that we're building. The whole lip pop, that shit was frightening, that shit was horrifying, and I think was the perfect way to build up to the whole hairdryer to the bathtub scene. And honestly, even though it's a lot to take in, I think watching this episode, the fact that I wasn't trying to speculate, I wasn't trying to theorize, I was simply, without a doubt, the most speechless I have been watching Wonder Egg Priority. I was sat there, my eyes were glued to the screen, it felt like I didn't blink for the entirety of the episode, and it felt like it was telling me these things, and putting into perspective what we saw, I'm just like, you know what, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if we're questioning the fact that Frill could invade characters' dreams, if not their psyches, to manipulate them using these other two characters, Hyphen and Dot, I believe is what they're named. I mean, we've been watching characters smack eggs open, which creates this Madoka Magica-like world that lets you hopefully protect a girl so she can rest in peace. And it makes so much sense that they developed these eggs as a way to hopefully counter what was happening, but at the same time, they're almost breeding magical girl-like people to embrace their own sick and twisted psyches in order to hopefully defeat the monster they made. It's kind of mind-blowing, but I do appreciate the fact that it wasn't a simple, like, Cube route, where, without going into specifics if you haven't seen Madoka Magica, I thought, and many people thought, they were going to go that direction, and while I guess you might be able to argue it was, I feel like the direction of trying to cover up your mistakes versus maybe trying to do something for the greater good, even though you can look at it logically and say it's kind of corrupt, I think is very interesting. And that's why watching this episode and just, putting into perspective the horrors that we've seen, it makes so much more sense. And I know some people may want specific explanations. How do the eggs work? How did they make an AI body? To me, I don't need to see that personally. I think this would be one of those situations where, show don't tell makes a lot more sense, because realistically this couldn't happen in our real world. So if we are just under the assumption that they have technology that allows them, because of the creations they've made, to manipulate girls into embracing their horrible thoughts, which you'd want to help them overcome, and the fact that they made these egg worlds, to me, I just need to know there's a type of technology that have been made in order to allow this to happen. I don't want some midichlorian Star Wars bullshit to pop up, because that just kind of ruins it to me. This episode, it was shocking. I think it left probably everyone speechless. And I'm sure many people have their questions. For me, I walk out of this episode simply saying, where's next week going? Is next week going to be I fighting Frill? Is next week going to be I dying? I mean, there definitely is the possibilities with I herself being an AI. I mean, the fact that AI, the hint's there. I saw a few people speculate on the matter, and honestly, I could see it work, but at the same time, is that the direction they're going, and what would that direction serve for the overall narrative, right? So, I don't know. This is going to be one of those finales that either A, it actually will end next week, or B, there will clearly be more left to tell, because we'll get that extra episode down the line, and I'd much rather them take their time to give that extra episode than just end it next week if that's not how they originally wanted to do it. Overall, to me, this was an overwhelming episode, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It was supposed to throw a lot at you, and you're supposed to sit on the episode for a week thinking about it, probably rewatching it a couple of times, and then when we go into next week, or whenever you rewatch the show again, it's going to be one of those things that you're going to be looking at a lot of these things a lot differently than we initially did, assuming what was happening when really this was happening all at the same time. I liked it. I really did. This was without a doubt the most fascinating episode, and while I could see maybe people potentially having issues with the fact that characters killing themselves or the bullying, the depression, it was manipulated seemingly by Frill and her little minions as being like, oh, you lose that kind of punch of realism. To me, the realism is still there. You just have that extra supernatural influence which allows these characters to give into those nasty thoughts easier, most likely as a way to tell a very anime designed story while still having that sense of realism surrounded by so much anime absurdity, which is like the egg worlds and the monsters, the nameless and all that. I liked it, but I'd be interested to hear definitely what people are thinking about this episode and where you think it might go with episode 12 next week, and if you think we definitely are going to get that episode 13. Let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.